Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Uh, today is this is room B, and our presentation is going to be customer support and documentation teams, a match made in heaven. Um, our presenter has graciously agreed to go by Silva, so that I can stop trying not to mutilate his name, um, and I appreciate that. Uh, Silva has a degree in engineering, a bachelor's degree in engineering, um, mechatronics engineering, very impressive, from Anna University, a master's in engineering from La Trobe University, and has received a PhD in computational mathematics from La Trobe. I should point out that I am horrible at math, so I bow down to your impressive credentials because I couldn't make a bachelor's degree in any of that. So um,
Okay.
he's currently working as a data strategist at a SaaS startup called Covia, Covi. Um,
Mhm.
his interests are in the area of business strategy, data analytics, artificial intelligence, and technical documentation. Silva, the floor is yours.
All right. Thank you very much, Marnie, for that wonderful introduction. In fact, I would say for technical writing, the word speaks louder than data. So I bow to all the technical writers out here who actually doing a great job in helping the world understanding a lot of technical information. Thank you so much. So let me dive into the presentation. So the topic I'm going to cover today is customer support and documentation team match made in heaven. The reason for that controversial title is most of the time I found that there's a lot of friction between customer support team and documentation team. And the other aspect to that is they are in living in silos of information. Which is a different perspective. Let me go into the detail of the presentation. So the overview of the presentation is I'll be talking about the role of customer support and documentation team. And then after that, I'll talk about how how do you bridge the knowledge silos. And then I'll give you some examples on operating model. And then I'll slowly go into the key performance KPI for each of this collaboration model to work and what kind of collective and shared business outcome they can actually achieve. And then after that, I'll open up for a few questions. So we live in a very dynamic and changing world where most of the time the kind of software product we touch gives you an integrated product experience. So if you look at a phone, probably it's a hardware device, but having said that, the way the software and the hardware actually works together gives you an immense product experience. This is just not the hardware product, it's also the software product that we regularly use. For example, we use Microsoft Teams or any other team collaboration software or any kind of productivity software, entertainment software. What really matters to us is the entire product experience. And people don't want to leave that product ever. They just want to be hooked, and that's how most of the products has been designed. And for that product experience to have to work and then gives you that kind of a wow factor for the customer, every aspect of your product has to be tightly integrated and has to talk to each other seamlessly. And that's exactly where you will need a lot of collaboration between a lot of teams. And before going to that kind of collaboration, let me give you some kind of a trends that is happening at the moment. So most of the customers who come to the platform, they need a seamless experience in terms of able to do things with the product they have, irrespective of what kind of difficulties they have, which means the user experience matters. And more importantly, when there is some problem with the product that you have, you will probably need to raise a customer support ticket, or you might be a Gen Z where you want to have self-service enabled for you, where you go and browse for the documentation and you solve the problem by yourself. The second trend we see in this world is as the product matures, we want to access the product and have that seamless experience anytime, anywhere, and in any device. So irrespective of anything I do, I want the same product experience irrespective of where I am, what I do, and what kind of devices I have. And the third kind of trend, I blame Twitter for this. Nobody have patience to read more than 140 characters. So, as a technical writer, you might be writing wonderful piece of information, but having said that, everybody wants an accurate answers with no waiting time. Okay, the more important thing is people attention span actually shorten, which means you need to get the right information in terms of what they want to achieve in a very short span of time. That is extremely important in the digital connected world we live right now. Okay, so what's the role of customer support team in this whole product experience? So if you look at any digital product or any kind of software product, the customer support team comes into play whenever the user is stuck with some problems. Okay, and the customer support team primary responsibility is to resolve that customer problem they actually face. And what do the customer actually need? They need a timely response. In fact, they need a quick response with no waiting time, which is a bit tricky for a customer support team. In fact, the SLA for customer support team are extremely hard to achieve in this digital age. I will talk about that in the later subsequent slides on why that is and what's happening. In terms of the channels where this customer support team are engaged with, it comes through chat, comes through email. Sometimes you might have some kind of a traditional way where people actually call, and then in the modern system where you have like ticketing system where the customer support team gets some kind of a tickets about customer problems they actually face in the product. And if you try to understand why the customer have to raise a problem, the problem occurs with the product itself, because not all the software products that we comes to the market has any bugs. Okay, they are not 100% bug free. Obviously there are like a lot of bugs, and some of these bugs will be happening in the production environment. Okay, some of these bugs are dynamically happening, so those are called production bugs. And once the production bug happens, the customer is not able to perform some activities in the product, in the software product that you have, or it constrains from delivering some of the outputs that they want from the product. Okay, obviously they are stuck. That's when they actually talk to the raise a ticket in the customer raise ticket, and customer support team comes into the picture. And the other team they will contact this customer support is, so let's say you release a new product features which is funky, and the customer have no idea about how to configure it. Okay, and that's when they're like, hey guys, I need help with configuring some of these things because I don't know where to get these parameters, or how do I connect these two things together. So that's when they ask a ticket. And the other times are they might be stuck in some steps. Okay, and they're trying to troubleshoot some of the problems. Excuse me. And those are the three high level kind of topics where a customer will raise a customer ticket, and that's when the customer support team comes into the picture. So if you look at the way the customer support team actually responds to the customer query, they are dependent on some a lot of teams. For example, engineering team. So the engineering team are the one who actually provide a solution. They resolve the production bug either through a patch release, or they might have some kind of a workaround if it's very related to a specific kind of a customer segment or particular to that particular customer itself. Okay, so the engineering team, they heavily dependent because those are the solution providers. Okay, the customer support team is more like a liaison or more like a broker. And the second dependencies with the customer support team is this customer success managers, the CSMs. They play a huge role in terms of engaging with the customer to ensure that the customer support team, the marketing team, sales team, everybody, they work together to maximize the customer satisfaction. It's extremely important. And the customer support team, they do play a role with this customer success managers, CSMs. And the next major dependencies is with the product managers, because once a bug comes in or a ticket comes in, obviously the product managers pitch in, trying to understand the customer requirement for a future enhancement, or they might want to understand some of the use cases which is not covered by a particular product feature. So it's extremely important for a product managers to get that insight from a customer support team, because the customer support team are the front end kind of staff who are actually servicing your customer. Okay, extremely important. As you see, there are a lot of dependencies, and guess what, in most of the organization I worked with, these dependencies in these things are extremely complex. Sorry. Um, So to solve this problem with the dependencies and all these tickets being raised, what do the customer support team do? They create a shadow knowledge base. They actually hoard a lot of information. Okay, they don't share it amongst the other people, because this actually helps them to resolve the customer support tickets very quickly. Okay, these are could be internal tips and tricks. They actually document them in a very well-known fashion, and they actually it's siloed. Okay, and sometimes they're not even documented. The tribal knowledge of how to do things and some troubleshooting insights or technical information actually resides in the customer support team members' head. Okay, they don't give out this information because that's what makes them feel important in the team, because they hold a lot of tribal knowledge and they don't document at all. And the other important aspect of the customer support team is they know a lot of production problems before the customer knows it, because they are using the product. Once the product release happens, they go and test the product, and they know the production problem even before the QA team or the customer does. So they hold a lot of that knowledge. Okay, having said that, how do they try to solve the challenges they actually face? Okay, once you think about a product, a SaaS product, they actually scale. The volume of customer actually grows over a period of time because the company is expanding into different regions and the revenue is pouring in. Obviously, they want to go and capture more market. The challenges that is faced by this customer support team is enormous. The first challenge they face is the volume of ticket. Once the product starts, they have a low volume of tickets coming in, and everybody pitching to help them. But once the product scales, the volume of ticket that comes into them is extremely high. This is due to the product growth. And the second challenge they face is um, time to resolve a particular kind of ticket. Okay, over a period of time, you really want to give them a top-notch customer experience, which means the tickets have to be resolved within a certain SLA that has been agreed with the customer. In fact, customer don't have patience these days, thanks to Twitter and other kind of platforms where people have less the attention disorder, where they only focus for a less period of time. They want everything to be done in a fraction of a second. Okay, that's the expectation out of the customer support team. And the third thing is, as your product grows, obviously the customer support team, because of the volume of tickets they have, they need to hire more resources. And that's when the problem is you're adding cost to the underlying the baseline of your operating capital. So obviously they are constrained. So these are the three high level challenges they face, and they actually struggle in terms of solving this problem because they have this siloed mindset. Um, so in a nutshell, if you go and talk to any customer support team, they always look busy. Okay, they just don't have time because the amount of things that's pouring in, and they have to manage multiple dependencies across the team. They're always busy. Guess what? It leads to stress. They're always the teams I've seen, they look busy and they're always stressed, given that they have to meet the SLA. All right, let's take a detour. Let's go to this amazing world of documentation where you have a lot of technical writers. They live in heaven. Okay, the reason I'm telling you is The only task that's given to them is go and produce amazing technical documentation so that you can actually simplify a lot of product documentation for all our end users. They are very happy. The reason is it's extremely easy. When you look at from the documentation team, there's no expectation out of them. There is no KPIs against them in terms of solving other bigger problems in the holistic problem of the product. They are all niche, and they're happy as ever. And what they do, they produce, they go and document each product feature. This could be some kind of a configuration guides in terms of how do you configure feature A, feature B. You can look at integrations. They also produce amazing how-to videos, tutorials, and more importantly, release notes. And they also look at bug fixes, enhancement, those kind of things as well. But the amazing thing they do is they are very dedicated in simplifying information, getting the technical information to the end customer. Occasionally, people also leave feedback. Sometimes the customer leaves some feedback in terms of improving some of their documentation, and they actually respond to that using some kind of analytics. So if you look at the dependencies for the documentation team, again, the engineering team comes into the play because they are the ones who are actually building the feature. So obviously they need to provide some kind of a knowledge transfer, okay, um, to the documentation team, and they actually go and document it. Sometimes in some of the organization, usually the engineering team do not provide KT. Instead, the product managers do, because they have the holistic idea about what the feature is all about, its functionality and its workflow and so on. So that is being settled. And also they also get dependencies in the from the quality assurance team or the testing team, because a lot of times they have to produce some troubleshooting guides of some known issues and things like that, and they are heavily dependent on the quality assurance team. Here, even though they live in a heaven, they do have some challenges. First challenges they face is it is hard for them to actually provide a business value proposition. Why do they exist in the first place? Even though we say the product experience and the documentation experience has to be tightly integrated, it is extremely hard for a documentation team, the technical writers team, to actually prove a value proposition. Okay, why do they exist? Just for producing documentation? No, it's on a bigger scale. But having said that, there is no evidence they can actually provide. I'll come to that later. You need a framework and you need to have some good metrics to capture that. But if you're a lone rider, good luck, it's a bit tricky. Okay, the second thing is cost. Sometimes the documentation team or the technical writers team is looked at as a cost center rather than looking at a broader perspective of what kind of bigger extent they can actually contribute to. Okay, and the third thing is, obviously, as your product scales, your product is getting complex, you need to scale your technical writers as well, because there's a need for resources, and it is extremely tricky because you're stuck in this loop. Prove me your value proposition so that I can actually hire another technical writer. Prove me that your capacity is maxed out. Okay, it's a bit extremely hard for them to actually prove with a lot of evidence. Having said that, the customer support team, they have a lot of evidence. Documentation team, not much. All right. So, in terms of them collaborating, if you look at it, they actually face the same challenges. The challenges are the same. In fact, the dependencies are the same. But having said that, there's a silo of knowledge. Okay, the documentation team is only producing documentation. Customer support team is only um, uh, resolving the customer support tickets, but there is no collaboration. They build a brick, and the knowledges are siloed. Okay, the documentation team, if your product is it's a SaaS product and you have global audience, most of the time the documentation team, technical documentation will be available online in a public way. But the customer support team, internal documentation, the siloed documentation is always private, kept in a shadowed kind of environment where nobody have access except the customer support team. What we need to do is we need to uh, break this wall, and guess what, they have to get married. Okay, they need to talk to each other, and this is a perfect match. This is where I'm coming at. The customer support team and documentation team, same challenges and same business outcome. okay, and they need to be have a tight integration. In fact, they need to have a very healthy business relationship so that they can actually achieve an amazing outcome. And what's an operating model for that? Is it's very simple. The customer support team are the front face for a product, for a software product, so that they can actually talk to the customers. In fact, sometimes it is facilitated to the customer success managers, but let's assume that the customer support ticket are the front facing of your product. They talk to the customers. The customer support team, they have to talk to the documentation team. I put two arrows, which means the duplex communication. The message goes to and fro. Okay. And the documentation team, obviously, they talk to the product team. And even this can be circular in a different way. They have to come up with some good operating model. Okay, whereby they need to establish some kind of a cadence in how they actually communicate, how they actually collaborate, what kind of business process we need to have in place when a new customer support ticket comes in, or when somebody raises a feedback for a particular documentation article. What is the input and output you need to give it to each of those stakeholders who are involved in this operating model? Extremely crucial for this operating model to work, and more importantly, it has to scale over a period of time. So coming back to the key performance metrics. So great. So we made a case for the customer support team and the documentation team to work together, and we also established some kind of an operating model. The operating model in many scenarios actually fails to work. The reason is the objective of these two teams are independent, and sometimes they're competitive. And for that, you need to have a some kind of a strategic approach, a holistic approach, in fact, to actually tie together both the KPIs of the customer support team and the documentation team to achieve one business goal. Okay, and that business goal is my first KPI: reduce the customer support ticket volume over time. Okay, and the documentation team have to play a key role in achieving that. Okay, and this cannot be a KPI for a customer support team because they alone cannot do it. The documentation team plays a crucial role. How do they do it? Let's assume over a period of time your product actually scales and there's a lot of issues coming in, and you probably know, you group all those kind of queries that's coming in, and you can actually know that 80% of the queries coming from 20% of the problems. Then what do? You attack those 20% of the problems. Okay, you provide a detailed documentation, how to guides, troubleshooting guides. You fix up the problems in the product itself, because if you find that that's the root cause of the problem, then you eliminated 80% of the tickets. Okay, and what the customer support team needs to do is, all right, so I got a customer support ticket, let me flick it to, let me share the documentation team so that the customer can self-serve and then troubleshoot the problem by themselves, because that's what they want. They don't want to wait on a phone call or they don't want to wait on a queue to get a customer support team respond to them. So it's extremely important for a documentation team to play a key role in reducing the customer support ticket. In fact, I sometimes say that inside the company, the mindset of the customer support team should be, they should reduce their resources over a period of time. And most of the customer support team should migrate or change the career to the technical writer or a documentation team, or they could follow another path to become a QA manager. Because why does the customer support team exist? Because of the production bugs, because of all the problems with the product. So obviously you strengthen, you find the root cause of the problem, you attack there. And that should be the mindset. Okay, that comes to the change management, which I will talk to you in my subsequent slides. And the second KPI is, how do I ensure I can deflect the tickets, okay, without even coming to the customer support team in the first place. It's extremely crucial for your seamless product experience. Okay, what happens, I'll give you a scenario. Let's say I have a problem and I'm stuck, or there's some production bug that happens. Then what do? I open up an in-app help. Okay, it's very simple to your voice recording you hear when you call some phone support. Okay, you press 1 to go and choose the menu, and then you press 2 to go to the menu, and then you pretty much, what the you're trying to do is you're trying to narrow down the problem. Same with the ticket deflection system. Once you open up your ticket deflection system, it will tell you what are the common problems that the customer is having right now, what is trending. And if it's a common problem, you provide a solution right there. So you deflect the ticket even before it comes to the customer support team. Extremely important KPI. Guess what? Who plays the major role? The documentation team, the technical writers. They know the issue very well. They build a comprehensive documentation, and they produce a very accurate, timely information to the customer, and it gets deflected even before it reaches the customer support team. It's extremely useful for you to scale. And the other aspect is what's the ratio of your unique views of your documentation article, and you divide it by your customer support team. Guess what? Over a period of time, this should actually increase over a period of time. Okay, this is another important KPI. In fact, Zendesk has this KPI as part of their software suite. Coming back to the customer outcomes, so I talked about the KPI. So if you do these three things efficiently inside your team using your operating model, your frameworks and processes, you will uh, you will get this amazing thing called customer trust, which is extremely hard to get these days, because you need to put a lot more effort, a lot more research to build a customer trust. And your documentation team and customer support team will help you to get earn your customer trust quickly. Okay, usually to get the trust in a very traditional way, it takes longer time, a lot of conversation, a lot of resources. But having said that, to if you want to shorten the cycle, the customer support team and the documentation team will play a crucial role. Obviously, once the customer trust is won, then the customer satisfaction goes up, the customer is happy. And over a period of time, if you do it very effectively, you get the customer loyalty. And once the customers are extremely loyal to your product and services, what do? They do customer advocacy. Okay, and they actually become your marketing engine for your software product. Okay, so this is an important aspect in terms of ensuring that collaboration between customer support team and the documentation team happens. Very important for a change management thing. So obviously, for this, you need to have a change manager who will facilitate that process in terms of building that tight collaboration between your customer support team and your documentation team. And as I said, the documentation team mindset should just not be, I produce a set of documentation, I published, my job is done. No, definitely not going to happen. For this model to actually work, the documentation team should be really focused from the customer angle, understand the customer issues from through the customer support team, and then write the documentation in such a way that actually helps the customer to self-serve, and also, if possible, try to deflect the tickets even before it's getting raised. Okay. As I mentioned before, the customer support team should not scale as the product actually expands in a different market. And that's not the way to you actually gauge. In fact, I've actually there is a there is a research paper that came out where they actually find empirical evidence where as your product actually grows, the complexity of your software product also grows over a period of time, which means the volume of customer support ticket you get over a period of time it also grows. Okay, and for that, what most of the companies do, they hire more support team, which is the wrong way of doing business. Okay, you need to fix the problem in the root cause, whereby, and then you need to have this tight integration between your customer support team and your technical writers team. Okay, and for this one to work at a larger scale, the technical writers, they need to produce documentation for just for the customers to self-serve, but also for the machines. When I say machines, this is where the new technologies come in, because these days the chatbots are very common. How does the chatbot know what is the right answer to give for a customer question? They needs to understand the context, needs to understand the taxonomy and an ontology of how your documentation is structured. What are the things that is uh, connected, what is causing what kind of documentation they need to give it to, what kind of context, what for specific parameters of a customer query. It all happens if the technical writers write the content not just for humans but also for the machines, so that the machine can actually translate that content in a human, natural, interactive way. Okay. And for this, the change management will play a huge role in bridging and facilitating these kind of gaps, in transitioning this tight collaboration between documentation team and the customer support team. And that's all I have for you. Thank you so much. I'm open to take some questions from you. Marnie?
Sure, let me just check the chat and see if we have anything in there. Actually, not seeing
Okay.
any. I'm not seeing any questions. Anybody have anything they'd like to add or share? Wow, I guess you were very thorough.
Okay. There is some question. What are the thoughts of the
Oh, there we go.
documentation team? Okay. Thank you, Mike. What are the thoughts of documentation team being part of the customer support team? Absolutely. If that's what okay. So comes to the organizational structure or why engineering as well. So the way the teams are being structured in most of the software organization is you have engineering team. An engineering team, you have some engineering manager, and the engineering manager reports to a product owner. And there is a product managers, group of product managers who report to the product owner as well. And you have customer success managers, customer support team, and you have sales, marketing, those kind of teams. But where this documentation team is positioned is usually the documentation team comes under the product managers because that's their responsibility, and the customer support team comes under the customer success managers team. And that's usually the way the structure. Sometimes it actually changes, but it's a very good aspect that the documentation team and the customer support team can be part of the same team, and they can report to the same head. uh, Definitely engineering team, they, because they are all developers, I would rather not put the documentation team with the engineering team. They can collaborate but cannot be part of the same team. But having said that, customer support team and documentation team, same part of the same group. Absolutely, yes. And again, it comes to the business agility you want. More importantly, it comes to that speed and agility what your business actually requires. Okay. Okay, so you're saying that you work for an engineering, but the customer success manager is looking to move you to their department. Again, as I said, this is a different style of how the organization is being structured. It all depends on the company's culture, and also the company's mission and vision as well. It is very different. Again, if you have any kind of, again, if you think that you should be part of some other team or not, go to your manager and then talk about the challenges you face, and talk about what kind of good outcomes you can actually get for your customers by moving into a different team or same team or something like that. That conversation actually helps. In our agency, the it's part of the engineering team. In fact, it reports to the product managers, and we work closely with all the aspects of the team.
I actually worked in engineering and in customer service at different times, and I discovered that the only problem I had is when I was part of engineering, I had
Uh-huh,
real clear and easy access to QE and the developers to really, question and figure out the details. When you're
uh-huh.
in a different organization, you're very much different, you know. a different side, and so they don't always give you access to the people you need to talk to. It's harder to get that access.
Yeah, yeah. Look, to some extent, it's a bit tricky because I sometimes crack a joke when I say the developers they talk in using code. Technical
Hmm.
writers they talk through words. They're two
Yep.
different worlds. And most of the time, the developers they are solution providers. They're extremely good at finding technical problems and providing solutions. However, they cannot translate that solution in terms of customer language from
Hmm.
customer perspective. That's exactly where the documentation, the technical writers play a huge role in terms of doing the translation in terms of the solution from the engineering um, into that. Again, the other aspect I haven't actually covered in my talk is that the UI, the copy text that you guys write in terms of that also plays a huge role. And sometimes I've seen the UI copywriter is part of the documentation team because they know how it works. In fact, it plays a very crucial role in terms of deflecting tickets, and then making that customer actually understand a lot of things, simplify things as well.
Very
Yeah,
true. Um, okay. Does anyone have anything else they want to bring up? Any questions you want to ask? Okay. In that case, I'm going to close the recording. Thank you for your presentation, Selva, and thank you all for attending. Uh,
thank you.